So we're continuing our discussion of chapter 9, my favorite chapter in the whole book. I like chapter 12 too because it's the gender and nonverbal stuff, but it was kind of hard to write and it has some tender information in it because it's about intimate relationships and nonverbal cues. Chapter 9 is really a joy to write. I just love this stuff. Probably because I've been a speech person my whole life and I've taken voice lessons at different times. I'm a singer. I do sing in the Corpus Christi Chorale. I've been with them for, 15, 17 years. We are hoping to get to start back up singing safely in January of 2021. So I'm hopeful for that. But I just love the whole vocal mechanism. It's just fascinating to me. And again, it is a massive channel of nonverbal communication. There's so much we can do with the voice, and it helps us with nuance, and it helps us be obvious, and it helps us deliver humor and sarcasm and irony, and it's just a very important and a very fascinating channel or code of nonverbal communication. So I'm picking it back up on about page 316. We're going to talk about pausing a little bit. I just paused there, didn't I? For dramatic effect. We have to pause when we speak. Why? To take in a breath. We have to be able to breathe to speak. So speech is driven by breathing. So if you want to take a turn at talk, you may go, or you may just go, and we can't see it. We don't notice it, but you have to have air, okay? So we pause to get air. We also pause for effect. We also pause to gather our thoughts, to give ourselves a little time, to give ourselves a minute to react to something. There's lots of reasons for pauses. What you don't want to do is what we call, crudely, the vocal fart. Sorry, there it is. How many speakers have you heard come up in front of a room, or worse, into a microphone, and the first sound you hear is, or, okay. Those are vocalizations, but they're like vocal farts, okay? They don't serve a purpose. They're a filled pause. That's the correct name for them. It's when we pause, but we fill it with sound. Don't let that be the first thing out of your mouth when you have a speech to do or a class presentation. Start with a word. Start with a sound and a word that's definitive. Don't slide in with a big old It can show nervousness and it shows a lack of confidence, and it's not the great sound that your audience is going to want to hear from you. So work on that if you would. Filled pauses, okay? Silent pauses. That's the opposite of a filled pause. A silent pause is an unfilled pause. It's a pause and there's no sound, okay? So we do that. I paused, didn't I? But I didn't make any sound. We do this all the time. Happens all the time. There's also an audible pause or an audible gasp, and it's when we can kind of hear you pause, and usually it's an intake of breath. It's like a okay? Audible pause. Take a look at that. Silence is on page 318. You might think that silence is not a nonverbal cue. Oh my gosh, it's a big nonverbal cue, right? Ever gotten the silent treatment from somebody? Not pleasant, is it? Sometimes it's a power play. We have breaks and gaps in our speech. Some of us have bigger breaks and gaps than others. Some of us, it's a real steady stream. But we all use silence. You've heard silence is golden. You've heard the song called The Sound of Silence by Simon and Garfunkel. That's my era, maybe not yours. But silence is a form of nonverbal communication. You are withdrawing an opportunity to speak. You're withholding speech. Maybe you're pacing yourself. Maybe you just need noise to come to a stop so you can reflect and rest and relax. There's also a thing called self-silencing, and I talk about it here in the book. It's troubling because it is connected to particularly women who may be abused in their lives. And so in order to not rock the boat or create a situation where they may face physical, emotional, psychological, and or verbal abuse, they don't speak. They self-silence because to speak up may bring harm to them. We have to talk about such awful things. But if you are in a relationship, men, women, trans, queer, bi, everybody, I don't care with who or what, if you're in a relationship and you find yourself self-silencing, you are kind of muting yourself, I want you to think about that and then maybe talk to me about that if I can be of help. If you find yourself silencing your views or your input or your communication with somebody, you need to think about why that is, and is that healthy? There are times we should be silent. There are times that we all wish we've said something, we all wish we could take it back. We're like, oh my gosh, why didn't I just be quiet? Everybody screwed up communication. We've all made mistakes. We've all thought, golly, if I just held my tongue. Isn't that an interesting thought? If I'd held my tongue. So silence is powerful, but if it is a pattern of you always being censored or muted or silencing yourself so as not to cause a problem or trigger someone, that's something we need to think about, talk about, maybe work on, because that's not a good situation. We are blessed with our voices. And sometimes if you can't use it, that might be a problem, right? That might be sad. Okay, turn taking. 320 on is several pages about turn taking. Typically in conversation, I take a turn, you take a turn, I take a turn, you take a turn. Some people don't adhere to this rule, and so they hold court. They just talk nonstop at you. This is very irritating. Conversation should be fairly equal. But we all have those conversations that are more one-sided, right? Maybe you got lectured at by your parents and they were like, don't say anything. I'm going to tell you what. Okay, parents do that. We get it. Sometimes teachers lecture at you. I try not to. I try not to do all the talking. Students are way more interesting than I am. I love students, college students. And so I would rather hear you talk. So I try not to lecture too much. Sometimes you just kind of get in a mode where you got to explain stuff. But sometimes we're too much the great explainers. Like I'm kind of doing now in this video, right? Yep. So turn taking, right? There are 4 categories here: turn requesting, turn maintaining, turn yielding, and turn denying. I will admit that I think these things are poorly labeled. They can be confusing. Here's what you need to know. Remember these terms from the perspective of the speaker. Okay? If I am turn requesting, that means I am doing those things requesting a chance to speak. So I might go, so a bunch of nonverbal cues, but also those vocal ones that say, hey, I'd like to say something here. So I am requesting a turn. If I want to maintain my turn at talk, I typically will get louder and faster to stave off somebody's interrupting my turn at talk. So I, as the speaker, am turn maintaining. If I want to finish my turn at talk and give it up, I'm turn yielding. Usually we bring the pitch down at the end of a sentence. Maybe we slow down and drag out the end of the sentence to say, I'm putting a period on this thing and I'm going to be quiet. Turn yielding. I give up my turn at talk. Turn denying isn't something you do to somebody else. Again, it's from the speaker's perspective. Somebody gives you a turn and you don't take it. So you're like, I'm good. You know, you just don't take a turn at talk. You just stay silent. So think of these 4 as from the perspective of a speaker. Am I requesting a turn? Am I maintaining my turn? Am I finishing and yielding my turn? Or am I not taking a turn? That's turn denying. Interruptions and overlaps is one of the last sections in here. There is another section on vocal indications of deception. I'm going to leave that for when I do some videos on deception. It's one of the last topics that we cover in nonverbal communication class. So interruptions and overlaps, they're a little bit different. Interruptions are a little more egregious. Interruptions we see sometimes as rude. A ton of people do it. Some people will just jump in the middle of your statement and just mow you down. And it's a patience thing, it's a listening problem. Overlaps are kind of viewed as not so bad. Overlaps can be a rhythm thing. That's when you start to speak as another person is ending their speech. It just overlaps a little bit. But an interruption is a bigger deal. A lot of us interrupt and people don't notice. They're used to it. They'll interrupt us right back. But sometimes it's considered very, very rude. And you're trying to get out your thought, and so somebody just lands right in the middle of it because they want to talk. And so it's kind of a competitive thing, and it can be seen as a rude thing. It's a hard habit to break, y'all. If you have this habit, if you're an interrupter, it's very hard to learn patience, isn't it? We can all use a bigger dose of patience. You need vocal patience. And so sometimes interrupting can really hurt somebody or really make somebody feel disrespected. So got to work on that. Okay, going to sign off for now on chapter 9. Thank you for watching my video and listening to the sound of my voice. Take care, students.